Without much delay, here we are for our fifth session of Ops Matters. We have Aman Angrish with us, and Aman, it is great to have you. Shogat and I mean, I've known you for what 10 years. Shogat has known you for almost 20 years now. We practically grew up together, and somebody told me 10 years ago that we would be sitting here having you as a guest on a podcast that we were doing. Uh,
Mm.
Session with folks from Ops Matters. I would have laughed and said that's ridiculous, but it has happened, and I am quite glad that it has happened. So it would be great, if you could walk us through a little bit about your background. We obviously know you very, very well. The folks on the call and people who will later watch this video do not as well. We've, of course, given them as much background as we possibly can about who you are and what you've done. But it would be great to get a quick overview in terms of your career journey, what you've done, and maybe end that with how and why you ended up in operations as a career, right? So
Okay.
that could be very interesting. What led you to sort of start at your first role and how you feel about ops in general.
So, first of all, thank you for that introduction. I think Shogat and Rohit I've known for the last 10, 12 years, and they know a lot about me in that sense. So, thank you for the opportunity for inviting me. I might be a little under the weather, so I might sound a little nasal here and there. So, just bear with me for the next 60 or 70 odd minutes. So, I think my journey started with Amazon. I got into operations through Amazon itself. So, it was more of a college internship point of view where I joined Amazon back in 2019 as an intern. So I did that internship. I had no clue or I did not have any idea or intention about joining operations in general, but it kind of fate kind of led towards it. So I joined Amazon in 2019 as an intern. I roughly interned for 6 months as a part of college internship program, and then post that I kind of became an area manager in the same organization. So I was an AM here at the FC in Bombay. I think you would have also mentioned that I kind of stayed in Bombay for the last 3 4 years with respect to that same FC, and I was handling shift-wise operations there at the FC point of view, and I was running multiple projects, multiple charters as I was progressing through the career point there. I think then in 2020, COVID happened. The entire operation shifted towards a different spectrum altogether. I was involved in that. In 2021, we kind of looking at the demands that we had in 2020, we kind of moved towards expansion phase where we kind of expanded the current building, current FC that we had. We kind of doubled up the size of the building. We kind of created somewhere around 1,500 seasonal employment opportunities by kind of increasing the size, the capacity, the supply to the customer's point of view in terms of the demand that we had in COVID. I think post 1.5 years there, with respect to that, I kind of wanted to challenge myself and test myself out into new waters, I would say, and kind of moved to Chennai to take up a step-up role in operations in Amazon itself. I wanted to see and kind of lead a team from a different region, cultural background, and everything, so that I can also adapt myself to that kind of a situation altogether. And I stayed there for a year, kind of leading the team in terms of Chennai operations and handling the FC operations there. And recently, I just moved back to Mumbai and kind of switched roles, switched companies, and I'm now right now leading the city for Zepto here.
Awesome. That is absolutely brilliant that you've had all of these experiences. And I think what folks are extremely excited about is to know more about what you're also doing currently and have been doing at Zepto over the last few months, because it is literally just a business and a business model which is taking up all of the news waves at this point of time. Before we get in, a little bit to the details, it might be helpful to give folks an overview, right? You spoke about Amazon, you spoke about COVID, you spoke about all of these different roles, but it might be helpful to take 2 minutes and give people a little bit of an overview of what happens at an Amazon fulfillment center, right? I mean, we place orders, we get stuff delivered the next day, nobody really thinks too much about it. And we've had a few other folks who've come on this call from an e-commerce background, and they've briefly explained the back ends of what happens. But it might be super interesting to get a very quick view from you. The moment you press buy now on your laptop or on your phone, what actually has to happen at the back end? What do folks like you and your team have to do to ensure that the order reaches us correctly and on time, the same day or the very next day?
Okay. I think the moment you press buy now and do enter all your credit card details to purchase, you would be getting something as either a confirmed ETA or a delivery time or a tentative ETA as well, in terms of which it would be delivered in the next 2 days or next 2 to 3 days. What the system backend does is it kind of, based on your location, it kind of back calculates all the possibilities of fulfilling that demand to the customer in the most effective and in terms of cost and in terms of delivery speed point of view. So let's say if you're staying in Mumbai and you order something in Mumbai, there's a 90% chance that it would be served through the fulfillment centers in Mumbai. So it kind of works around in terms of both cost and in terms of cost and speed to kind of deliver to the customers here. Once the customer has given the purchase or has signed off for the purchase point of view, we as a team kind of start working backwards from the customer end. Let's say if the customer is supposed to receive the order in 2 days, it has to reach, let's say, the delivery hub by 1.5 day. So that the delivery hub has half day to kind of deliver it to the customer within the postulated time. If the shipment is supposed to reach the delivery hub by 1.5 days, it should depart from the FC in 1 day or so. So we have got something called as CPTs, or critical pull times, where we are supposed to move the shipment from one phase to the other phase and kind of complete the entire transaction so that there is no delay in terms of operational procedure point of view. Coming to the FC point of view, there are 3 or 4 major steps involved. The number one would be the picking, which is basically how the shipment gets picked by the number of associates that are working there. Then there's something called packing, where it gets packed into the various boxes that you get at Amazon. Sometimes you get in carton boxes, sometimes you get in, I think, paper bags and something of that sort. So there are various ways in which we kind of ship out to the customers based on both cost and speed. Let's say if something is not fitting in the right box, we have dedicated box sizes for it, and kind of we ensure that we are utilizing the maximum space of that box so that it can be shipped securely. So once that is done, it goes to the next step, which is basically your slamming, where all the customer details that you get on top of on the box are kind of pasted on top of that, so that the various legs can kind of scan it and kind of sort it out in terms of that. So these are 3 or 4 major steps that happens in an FC, and it goes to the FC dock, and from where it kind of gets departed on time. The very crucial part is this time factor, where we kind of ensure that we are not missing out on any of the customer promises, where we are kind of ensuring 100% CPT performance in terms of our customers and kind of delivering them on a timely basis. I think that covers the overall gist here, where we have the entire life cycle of how the shipment moves from one end to the other.
And a fulfillment center like Mumbai, which is catering to probably one of Amazon's largest, if not the largest urban market that they have,
Hmm.
how many people would on an average day be working at a fulfillment, like today, like in the non-COVID times when everything is okay, or pre-COVID? Like what's the number of people that you would typically have working at a place like that?
I think the last time when I when I was part of the Mumbai team, I think we had somewhere around 1,500 to 1,800 odd associates. I'm just talking about the associates level, and this comprises of the multiple departments that we have. So we have got something as inbounding, where we kind of directly receive from the seller and kind of put that inventory into our stocks and kind of ensure that these are available in the bins for the pickers to pick. Then you got inbound, then you got outbound, then you got someone as called as quality. There's a quality team involved, where we kind of ensure that the quality of the inventory is kind of maintained, the sanctity of the inventory is maintained, and then you got something as an FC doc outbound. So on an average, it would be somewhere around 1,500 to 1,800 odd associates in a large and or extra large FC point of view. There are FCs which work on different scales and sizes based on the city, based on depending on the population that they serve. There might be multiple FCs in a city. Let's say Mumbai would be having right now 2 or 3 different FCs. So you would be kind of looking at somewhere around a workforce population of somewhere around 3,000 plus associates.
Got it. Understood. And the reason why I was asking this question was to sort of segue into the next one, right? which is this an incredibly complicated operational setup that you explained. There's so many steps. There's 3,000 people working to make sure that, Shogoto gets his order delivered in Mumbai on time. But what happens, when you have something like COVID hit, and when you have the inability for so many people to maybe be at the same place, work together, and all of this, but you still have, but more than ever, right? Like people are ordering things on e-commerce, like stuff that they would have gone outside and bought typically. They have no choice but to get it delivered to their house today. So we just thought, it'd be interesting to spend a little bit of time talking about this cataclysmic event of COVID that happened right after, I think, 6 months, 8 months into you joining your role at Amazon, right? It's your first year of working, and you're a new operations manager, you have a team of people, and you have like massive pressures to deliver during the biggest e-commerce craze the country, had ever seen up until that point of time. So it'd be super interesting to, get a little bit of context from you on how, what happened, first of all, uh, for you guys during COVID, and then maybe to, chat on a few points about what you all did to fix it. Here is, where it would also be interesting to do what we're usually doing on these sessions with the audience and our speakers, which is if you have, a few specific instances that you and your team worked on, operational problems that you ended up solving, and which impacted the business, impacted you in a significant way. Instead of giving us the answer outright, maybe play the challenge or the scenario to us. And if anybody from the audience wants to take a chance to try and put themselves in your shoe, try and give an answer, and engage in a discussion there, we'll do that, and then move on with the correct quote unquote answer from your side. So to
Okay.
start off with, right, like what happens, like listen, COVID hits, what is it like? What's the impact and the overall sort of like mahol, right, in the FC to start with?
I think uh, when COVID happened, everything came to a standstill, right? So overnight, all the FCs were shut across the country. I will not say the city, but across the country, and kind of we were sent back home. All the associates and managers and everybody was sent back home with respect to because we were uncertain what is going to be the next step here when we got announced into lockdown point of view. So I think we were at home for the first 7 or 10 days, I would say. I think 20th March, COVID lockdown happened, and I think till 1st April, I was at home, I would say. And in those 7 or 10 days, uh, the team at Amazon, specifically the legal team, kind of was working tirelessly in terms of getting the operations restarted. So most of the time that we spent at home was into different stuff and kind of discussing whether the operation would really start. And once we got a go ahead from the government in terms of restarting operations, the operation was purely focused on essential items only. So Amazon caters to a million inventory in terms of the overall spread of inventory that we have. But we were only supposed to sell out only the essentials, which include your grocery, which include your normal regular household stuff and everything of that sort. So when those kind of decisions came, we kind of were brought back to the FC. Surprisingly, at that point of time, there was only one FC in the entire Mumbai which used to cater to such demand, or a part of that FC used to cater to that demand. And once people got to know that Amazon is catering to that demand, the demand skyrocketed. There was not an end to demand there. Okay, and matlab, for if I just talk about numbers, we were doing somewhere around, matlab, the FC had a capacity of doing somewhere around 1 lakh units a day. Probably we're getting somewhere around, matlab, we had a potential capacity to do somewhere 3 or 4 lakh units just because the demand was that high. And when I'm talking 1 lakh units a day, it's more in the sense when you're working with the operational headcount, when you have the optimized headcount. Once we started the operations, we did not have the required headcount. We were working with I think 1/4 or 1/5 of the headcount that we had. We just initially brought in people who were allowed to come. We had given them passes. We had kind of ensured that all the government norms and regulations were followed strictly to the dot. We had ensured that their RT-PCR tests and everything were done, and they were kind of COVID negative before just stepping into the jurisdiction. Even into the FC point of view, proper safety and regulatory norms, double masking, wearing gloves, and everything of that sort were kind of ensured through and through, so that people were operating and working safely in that environment. But once you I think my first day there back in a different FC, I think we were somewhere around 30, 35 odd managers, in the sense people ranging from normal shift managers to site leads and all. So the count of managers were somewhere around 35, 40 people, and the count of associates was somewhere around 20, 25. So there were more managers than the associates who were going to work. So we all came together and kind of started working in terms of ensuring we clear out the backlog that was there. Since we kind of left up operations abruptly, there was a lot of backlog which was pending in terms of making sure that the floor is ready for new assignments and shipments point of view. So I think that was one of the fondest memories that I have while working in Amazon, where all people kind of came together to restart operations safely. I think overall point of view, it kind of had a very big impact in terms of people's life, where we kind of started growing and kind of working around in terms of delivering to the customers. I think post that we had a 15-day or 20-day window where we were kind of supplying to somewhere around 30 or 35,000 odd consumers in that period daily point of view. And while we were doing this, we were also kind of looking at the problem of how do we kind of ensure that we meet the demand. So the demand was continuously growing, and we did not have enough supply to kind of meet that demand. So in the back end, the team was working with respect to tech, with respect to product, with respect to legal, with respect to infrastructure. So we had two other FCs which were operational, which we could operate on, but they did not have the essentials inventory. So basically, we wanted to kind of build the inventory there in terms of essentials category and kind of start supplying from there as well. So I think it was a 3-week long procedure or month-long procedure where we kind of went back and forth with legal, with infra, with kind of product, with kind of a lot of different stakeholders to kind of retrofit the new FC in terms of kind of building that capability to supply to our consumers there. And I think after a month, we kind of launched essentials item, basically what you used to call as Amazon Pantry back then. So we launched that in the new FC as well, in terms of building that capacity point of view and everything. And I think one strategic move that we also kind of did, how do you ensure, if anyone you would have kind of seen an Amazon Pantry before COVID, we would have seen that once you would have ordered, you would have gotten in some kind of plastic tote, which would be kind of recyclable. Just from cost point of view, it would be recyclable. So how do you think we managed, considering COVID point of view, where we would kind of ensure that there's no cross-contamination of those containers? So I think we had 3 different types of plastic totes that we are using to kind of deliver to our customers. And these totes were kind of being used end to end, in the sense from the first mile to the last mile point of view, where the last mile would do the delivery and kind of bring those totes back to the FC. Since the inception of COVID, we kind of had a very difficult task to kind of deliver on these specific challenges with respect to government as well. So what we came up with, we kind of distributed or kind of divided the segments of customers or the order patterns into 7 or 8 different categories in terms of how much volume or the area that they can utilize, and kind of introduced the 5-ply and 7-ply cardboard boxes that are there. So right now, if you see, the entire packaging has shifted to cardboard boxes being specifically used, and these were kind of specifically installed to cater to this COVID demand. And now it has continued through and through all these years. Even when now we have the luxury of kind of switching it back to totes, we are kind of utilizing this specifically 5-ply and 7-ply cardboards. That time it was a very cost-intensive decision, but considering the safety of our customers, considering safety of our consumers, even the safety of our associates and everybody working there, it was a decision that we had to take in terms of delivery point of view. We had 7 different categories. We had 7 different SOPs on how to pack it. so that the customers receive the products in the proper intact quality. Like, let's example, you're ordering something as a 1 kg sugar and a 1 kg packet of oil. The oil does not leak or the oil does not damage the sugar. How do you pack it? So those kind of proper SOPs, those kind of proper standards and procedures of packaging and everything were kind of written down and kind of installed as a modulus operandi for all the associates working there. And I think building the entire supply chain across the FC was the biggest obstacle that we had. Even after having the dedicated workstations, retrofitting it to kind of meet the consumer demand and everything, building the supply chain of building the supply of headcount or the associates that we had working at the FC was one of the critical tasks that we had across.
And maybe my last question on the Amazon piece, right, is clearly packaging has to change. You are working with significantly reduced manpower, right? So overall, right, from an operation strategy perspective, what had to change to sort of meet increased demand with lesser headcount? Was this an opportunity for you guys to potentially automate? Was this a time when, everybody rolled up their sleeves and like, "Okay, we will do 12-hour shifts as opposed to, the normal 8-hour shifts." I'm sorry, Amazon doesn't have normal 12-hour shifts. So 16-hour shifts instead of the normal 12-hour shifts that they were always doing. So just trying to understand, right? Like there's brute force, which to a certain extent would have been necessary. That brute force then requires significant, capabilities in terms of leadership and motivation. And then, like you said, there's also slightly more quote unquote technical modifications that you need to make. So if you could give us an overview, right? I think this insight into the packaging piece was helpful to get a glimpse. But if you could give us a broader picture, right, of what you guys had to do differently inside Amazon at this point of time, and bear in mind that this is for folks on the call, this is a company that is extremely sophisticated, extremely detailed, has very, very strong methods and systems of doing things, a lot of which potentially you have to now throw out and rethink from scratch in some way.
So I think the overall approach towards the strategy changed significantly while we were in COVID and post-COVID as well, in terms of how we wanted to meet the customer demand of the future. So the rapid expansion phase was just launched in to kind of meet and kind of exceed the customer demand that we were kind of expecting in the future, just because Amazon was a household name, but it was now becoming a very big household name in terms of meeting the grocery and everything of that sort. Apart from that, I think running operations in a very constrained environment is something that was crucial and critical in terms of deliverability of success. I think working in an organization like Amazon kind of helps you getting access to a lot of variety of people who kind of work in a way that kind of change the ways of working. It can be as simple as structural solve in terms of kind of ensuring that the workstations are available in terms of packaging point of view. So basically what we had a packaging line where we had a multiple workstations that were installed. We kind of increase the distance between the workstations and kind of installed partitions to kind of ensure that you have the 6 feet or 3 feet norm available across as per government standard point of view. So these were some of the temporary measures that we had to ensure that we can have or we can build the supply to meet the demand. The other would be kind of introducing we had a camera-based technology that we introduced across the FC, where we used to monitor through image processing whether associates are coming in contact or not, in terms of the 6 feet the distance that is there between the associates point of view. So all these tech and kind of product solves, along with operational kaizens that we used to kind of ensure and kind of do on a day-to-day basis. I think one of my leaders kind of ensured that we should incentivize people on safety rather than just punishing them for safety point of view, that they are not adhering to the process. We should start incentivizing them for kind of ensuring or maintaining the best safety practices in a situation like this. And this kind of helped kind of associates be motivated, associates be inclined towards ensuring double masking, wearing hand gloves, maintaining 6 feet distance across the FC point of view, because at the end of the day we would be doing a gemba, or what you call as a walk around the aisles, and kind of identifying associates, the best performing associate based on that, and kind of giving out coupons, or some kind of safety gift cards or something of that sort, so that incentivization was the biggest motivator in terms of maintaining the discipline, and kind of ensuring that even the customers as well as the operators are safe in this working environment. Obviously, meeting the demand curve was challenging, and that we kind of solved through automation. Through in 2021, when we launched the second phase of the FC, where we kind of increased the capacity, where we kind of automated the entire process. So earlier, we used to do picking in terms of carts, where you had where the associate would push the carts across the different floors of the building, and kind of pick the products, and kind of bring it to the packaging area and kind of pack it. Uh, in 2021, we kind of switched to an automated tote conveyor system. The tote conveyor was somewhere around 5-6 kilometers long across the building. It used to run across all the 4 floors, and it kind of reduced the movement of the pickers in the building. It kind of helped pickers to just pick from one area, drop the totes on the conveyor, and then again go back to picking in the same area. So it kind of reduced the entire churn in terms of movement for the associate, kind of helped them ensure that they were working in the normal working conditions and environment, while ensuring that we are building up the capacity for the future. So I think we went from a peak capacity of 1.5 lakh units a day to somewhere around 3 lakh units. And I think still the site is doing somewhere around upwards north of 3.2 lakh units a day.
Got it. Understood. And you said something interesting, which was that this experience taught you about, how do you deliver more with less? How do you meet demand when you have constrained resources? And then you decided to move from Amazon to Zepto, which is arguably a much smaller company, a much smaller organization, has immense pressures for growth and scale at this point of time. So I think the first question that Shogoto and I both had, and I'm sure people on this call would also be interested to know, what made you move from Amazon to Zepto, right? And then we start with that, and then get into more about what you're doing at Zepto, and how it's different from Amazon. And then if folks have any questions that they would like to ask you about Zepto, about quick commerce in general, I think it would be a great time to take those questions going ahead. But to start with, why join Zepto? Why leave Amazon, and then why join Zepto?
Okay. I think I had been with Amazon for last 5 years or so, starting from the internship point of view, and it was a great learning curve in terms of learning the process, people, kind of having that mindset on how to become a better leader and everything of that sort. But I think, as most of this panel is already aware, or is a big fan of video games, I also kind of think my life as a video game, where I want to kind of develop my character a little bit more than the normal. So it is more of the sense that, what if I step out of my comfort zone and try to do things which are different, which will kind of have a long lasting impact, but would be very stressful at the first. Joining Amazon itself was like that itself, where you had the first 6 months of internship. Probably the first year or year and a half would be very stressful, because you go from a fresh graduate to a working professional in a company like Amazon, which has high operating standards, high standards of execution, deliverability, everything of that sort. So it kind of helps you grow your EQ. Now, when I compare myself to that 22-year-old kid who just stepped out of college, and the EQ that I had back then, and right now what I have, I think there's a very big difference, and the major role was played by Amazon. So I think, thinking along the same lines, I kind of wanted to switch in terms of my career, to try out something new, try out something different across my profile, across an industry which is kind of booming right now, which is kind of set to be the industry of the future. So I wanted to see how this kind of scales up, and how I can be a part of it in terms of the fitment point of view. I had initially, I had relocated to Chennai based on that same principle and ideology, because I wanted to work under different conditions, different constraints, and kind of become a better leader there. And I think the similar approach, I kind of followed it here, and kind of moved.
Got it. Understood. So before we get into Zepto, right, and what you're doing, maybe give us a little bit of a high level view, right, on what does it mean to be the Bombay city head of operations for Zepto, right? So you told us about Amazon, how many people work there, and in the number of orders you guys were processing and a bunch of these things. But when it comes to Zepto, like, you are the person who is on point, on hook, for ensuring that everybody gets their orders correctly on time. So it's a big step up in terms of responsibility. Give us a little bit of an idea, in terms of what is the scale and magnitude of what we're talking about here, in terms of people, in terms of volumes, and or however else, dark stores, however you would like to sort of describe it at a high level.
I think it has been a very significant shift in terms of the overall responsibility point of view. Uh, I think in Amazon, even as an operations manager, there are areas where I was working or operating in silos in terms of the decision making or the impact of those decisions. I think after moving to Zepto, the decision making and the impact of those decisions has increased significantly. Right now, we are looking at a city which has somewhere around 85 odd dark delivery hubs across the city, operating at somewhere around 1.8 to 1.9 lakh orders a day. And this is normal BAU situation. During peaks, we probably touch more than 2 lakh in that sense. So I think it becomes significantly important how quick the decisions are in terms of operational point of view, and what is the impact of those decisions. Uh, I have increased my stakeholder interaction like anything right now. I am involved, I think, with product, with tech, with a lot of other teams in terms of streamlining a lot of processes and overall operational capability. But I think it's a new learning curve. It will take some time to kind of mature out in terms of the overall point of view. But I think overall sense, there has been a huge growth opportunity for me, which I'm kind of trying to adjust and kind of trying to ensure that I kind of maintain that. It's a 24/7 operation, so it's a 24/7 escalation mechanism where you are receiving calls at 2 o'clock in the night, 3 o'clock in the night about some escalation or something that has gone wrong, or some of the other issues. There would be internal issues, there would be external issues, and then you would have to kind of help the team resolve it on a urgency basis, because we do not want any kind of issues, whether it be internal or external, to impact the customers in any sort of way. So leading the team and as working with the team with such a high caliber is kind of a new opportunity area and a kind of new growth area for me, and which I am trying to kind of balance step by step, I would say.
Sorry. And in terms of your team here, so Amazon, you mentioned across three FCs, there were 3,000 people. You were working with a few hundred of them directly. What's the sort of, the scale and size of operations here? So more than 80 stores, 2 lakh orders per day. And how many people does it take to essentially do that at a high level?
I think when you look at that size, it would be somewhere around, if you look just the first mile point of view, which is people that are involved directly in terms of packaging the order and kind of making it ready for the riders, it would be somewhere around 2,000 to 2,200 odd associates
Okay.
across the 85 delivery hubs that we have. And if I look at the rider point of view, it would be somewhere around uh, 8,000 to 9,000 riders on a weekly basis that we would be having. So that is a separate beast altogether in terms of the last mile point of view. It is handled by one of the exceptional people that we have at the organization, and kind of deliver in terms of that. But it's altogether different beast and a different challenge altogether.
Got it. So effectively, you're looking at the Mumbai city, you're looking at like almost 10,000 people, who in some way or form, either regularly or seasonally, are working. And all of these people, I mean, even though you may not be looking at, say, the rider operations and the delivery aspect all the time as your main focus, I understand that it's more on the dark store operations and, execution of in managing inventory, supply, all of those things. But still, you're looking at 2,000 people who in some way or form report to you directly, and then 8,000 people, another 10,000 people who are dependent, on decisions that you're making on a regular basis. Awesome. So I think this has set great context, for what you've been doing at Zepto, and how it is different. walk us through a little bit about, what does the day-to-day look like when you handle operations of this scale? And maybe give us a little bit of an idea of how the approaches, the methods of doing things are different, right? From how they were at Amazon versus how they were at Zepto. I'm already understanding that, like, the frequency at which things happen and the amount of time you have to make decisions is probably one of the biggest differentiators, where you're looking at things in minutes as opposed to hours or days. So I assume that has a significant impact on how you, the team, and everybody also approaches the tempo and the pace of work on the day to day. But in general, right, give us a view. What does an operations manager or the operations lead for the entire dark store operations for Mumbai? What does your day to day look like? How are things different from the day to day at Amazon?
Think back at Amazon, we had very set specific, uh, I would say, meetings or cadences in terms of kind of discussion point of view. I think more or less that was limited because of the kind of operations that we used to run in terms of handling one FC and kind of minimal external disturbances. Most of the problems would be internal, and we would be kind of focusing on internal solves and internal resolutions point of view, and that would be discussed within the team or with the leadership of the site, and kind of be kind of resolved in a day or two basis point of view. I think moving to Zepto and kind of understanding how much external disturbances or uh, problems can impact the operations is something of a different scale altogether. Here, most of my bandwidth is spent in terms of streamlining a lot of operational flows, in terms of ensuring that we deliver to the customers in terms of the speed, the cost, the quality, and customer experience point of view. I think the basic building blocks have not changed, but the overall approach towards it has changed, as we are working with 80, 85 different dark basically delivery hubs that are there across the city, and each would be having its own specific nuance, its own specific challenges based on the geography that it is in, or based on the day-to-day problems that it is in. So I think the overall system point of view, it would be very crucial to understand how do you want to keep a review mechanism in terms of ensuring that all the stores and the problems are kind of reviewed on a daily basis. uh, I think that's something which I am also lacking right now. Probably I'll pick it up in few days or a few months time. But I think the overall review point of view, in terms of understanding, in terms of solving the problems, is something extremely crucial, and that is something starkly different than what I had at Amazon. At Amazon, I knew there was a specific problems that can arise, and I knew how to solve it playbook by playbook. I had something at the back of my mind. I knew how to solve it. Here, every day you wake up, you are praying that there's not a different problem that rises up, and kind of you do not have to solve it. So that's it. Yeah.
Interesting. And in terms of some of these problems that you're looking at solving, right? And or maybe before that, trying to understand a little bit about, what are your main priorities, right? Like, what are you accountable for in this role that you now have to deliver? Give us a little bit of a picture of, what your priorities, what your concerns as the ops head for Mumbai are. And then maybe it'd be interesting to get a couple of examples from you in terms of, what are some of the interesting things that you guys have done of late to solve some of the pressing problems that were there as you came in, joined the organization, and have now spent, a couple of months growing into it.
I think as the organization motto says, we want to deliver it quickly, and we want to deliver it in a speed that is unmatched across. I think speed is one of the most important factors that we kind of work on day in day out basis, where we kind of look at our metrics in a manner in which we try to ensure that all the customers are getting our orders within the stipulated threshold that we have set. And how do you kind of work out around that in terms of building the operational capability, as well as kind of improving the operational efficiency of those specific geographies or areas that we are suffering from. I think speed would be one of the most crucial factors. You cannot become a quick commerce company if you're not quick. So that is one of the key factors that we have. Apart from this, we are also kind of invested heavily in terms of ensuring that our customers get the right quality of products as well as the customer experience that we have. We have several initiatives and projects and programs that we run throughout the city as well as centrally across pan-India basis in terms of ensuring that the right quality of products is being served to the customers, and we are kind of uh, ensuring that the products do not cause any kind of customer grievances or experience harm to them. Since we are serving local green groceries like your fruits and vegetables and everything of that sort, so sourcing becomes one of the key important challenges, which kind of ensures that the right quality is being served to the customer at the doorstep. I think the sourcing team here does the fantastic job of kind of getting the right quality of the product in time, and then we have that efficient supply chain where it is kind of brought to the mother hub, from there to the dark hub, and then we kind of deliver it out based on the order flow and pattern. We kind of also ensure that the right products are kept at the right location. What I mean to say is you would be having different setups for, let's say, your fruits and vegetables, for your chiller products, and for your frozen products, and we kind of ensure that the temperature gradient is maintained through and through, so that while once it is out for delivery, it kind of does not impact the overall customer experience point of view. You do not want an ice cream that is melted. You do not want a cold drink that is not chilled, something of that sort. So cost would be speed would be one thing, quality and customer experience. The other thing would be cost. How do you run an organization of this scale in terms of uh, building the overall operational supply chain while having costs at the back of your hand in terms of overall operational point of view, in terms of delivery, in terms of execution, in terms of associates. All these related fixed and variable costs also play a key important part in terms of the overall operational efficiency. And I think the fourth important thing is, how do you become the market leader? And I think as an organization, we are kind of invested heavily in terms of expansion and in terms of growth point of view, where we are launching new cities, as well as kind of ensuring that our presence in our existing cities kind of grow day by day. So we have a pipeline of cities and we have a pipeline of stores that we are launching on a day-to-day basis and on a monthly basis. And we kind of aim to kind of build that uh, position as an industry leader and kind of ensure that we have a wide variety of customers to serve on a daily basis.
Awesome. And if you just take these four things, right? There is speed, there is quality, there is cost, and then there's growth pressures in certain manners, right? And like this entire piece around market leadership. If you take these four, now that you've been in the role for like a quarter or so, any examples that you would like to share with the folks here, right? And it doesn't have to be a playback. You can just give us the example, walk us through the journey, and give us the answer
Hmm.
in terms of in maybe any one or two out of the four of these things, where there's been a bunch of interesting stuff that you all have done to either do something for speed, do something for cost, for quality, or for market leadership. It'd be interesting for folks to hear about how some of these decisions are made and what considerations go into doing these things, and then of course how you actually implement a bunch of this stuff.
Got it. So I think from quality front of view, I think we've already discussed on how we do the sourcing point of view. But I think even for FMCG products, which we get directly from the manufacturer, in terms of, let's say, the cold drinks or the ice creams that we have, how do we kind of ensure that they are kept in the right locations, which are the chiller and freezer units, and how do we kind of dispatch them? Is the one of the Sorry, it's one of the key things that we do at Zepto specifically. If you have ordered something from frozen category in terms of Zepto, you would have seen that you would have gotten it in a different bag altogether. Or once the delivery associate reaches to the customer, he would have handed it to you in a different bag completely. So what we have is something called as an insulated bag that we have, and with gel pads. So basically, we have the silicone gel pads that we kind of use at our homes, but we have it at blast chilled in terms of in the freezer point of view, and we kind of pack those gel pads in those insulated bags along with the order, so that once it reaches the customer, it reaches in the proper shape and size that the customer orders. It kind of uh, helps us to reduce the damage cases in terms of the melt, in terms of the other defects that we might be having at the customer end. So that would be one of the key examples that I can mention.
Understood. Got it. And these kind of things, which is like, okay, we need to put a separate packaging for the cold chain products, etc., etc. No, whereas at Amazon, you may have, playbooks that were already created 10 years ago, which have been used in like fulfillment centers across the world.
Mm.
And okay, either you're at a process of say catching up to getting your fulfillment center up to those standards, or if an anomaly or something happens which was not expected, you have a playbook to refer to. Okay, this happens, let's try and do this. My understanding is that a lot of these things are being built uh,
Mm.
on the day to day here at Zepto, right? And I think maybe my last question is, as you think about building that playbook, right?
Mm.
How are you guys thinking of doing that? And specifically in your case, given that you've come from an organization like Amazon, which is already very strong in best practices, from a thought process point of view, does it help you to build SOPs and get a lot of this stuff standardized very, very fast? Because I remember when I was at P&G, our biggest headache at all points of time used to be, problems occur, but how do you create standards to ensure that they don't reoccur, right? Whether it's in terms of maintenance, whether it's in terms of repair, whether it's in terms of the part or the product or the component that would keep breaking or like damaging on an ongoing basis, whatever, right? As an example. So how do you guys approach, building and deploying SOPs in a place which is so dynamic? And secondly, do you think having spent the time in a rigorous sort of operational role in your early career at Amazon has helped you to deal with all this uncertainty and new problems and stuff that crop up in a system that's not as that hasn't been around for nearly as long at this point of time.
So I think let's start with answering the second question that you had. So my 5 years in Amazon kind of helped me not just go by the playbook, but also kind of understand what kind of problems that can arise at an FC in a general way. And I think my experience in Amazon has kind of taught me how to kind of preempt problems uh, somewhat in Zepto as well. So I think having that experience altogether is extremely crucial. It kind of helps you understand things in a different way in terms of understanding how you can build certain mechanisms, how you can kind of build certain solutions. You can also go ahead and directly copy paste those solutions from your previous organization. I think that is one of the biggest things that you have in terms of kind of a learning experience point of view that you can have. So that would be from the Amazon perspective point of view. At Zepto, I think uh, there are there are solutions or there are playbook solutions, I think, for certain problems in hand. But I think at large, because of multiple internal and external issues, there are not specific playbooks options that you can rely on because as I mentioned, every store would be kind of operating with a different 360 altogether, different structure point of view, and it would be having the different nuance and different problems altogether. Probably you can have a store certain playbook where you kind of know if okay this thing occurs you have to take these 3 steps, or if this thing occurs you got to take the next 4 5 steps. But I think at an overall organization point of view or an overall operations point of view, there are few playbook options that are available that we kind of ensure that we are kind of following through and through end to end point of view. But I think the major focus for the next couple of months would be building in terms of store specific playbooks and kind of ensuring that each individual store operates at the maximum efficiency and kind of maximum capability so that the entire structure operates at that level.
And my last question here before I hand it over to Shogoto to talk a little bit, about what you've learned throughout these journeys, and any sort of
Mhm.
takeaways that you have in terms of skills, capabilities for the folks who are on the call who'll be watching the recording. Uh, how do you get these SOPs, right? Let's say you've thought them up, somebody else in leadership or somebody from one of the delivery hubs who's operating that individual store as the store leader has come up with, something. How do you try and reapply this stuff across so many different stores, so many different people? Okay, this is a good practice. We should be doing this everywhere, right? say as a thought process? Like, how do you take individual pieces of like brilliance or ideation that people have and turn it into standards, right? So and in a system that's changing so fast. And the second is in terms of training, right? Especially given that a lot of your workforce might be seasonal, people might be here for some time, they may go and work for another quick commerce company for some time, or for whatever reasons, right? Or maybe it wasn't their plan to spend too much time in quick commerce, they just did it for 6 months while setting themselves up, say in Mumbai before they got a job at a factory, whatever, as an
Mhm.
example, right? So how do you turn these individual pieces of brilliance into policy, or SOPs at scale? And with such a dynamic workforce, let me put it that way, how do you think about like training and getting people to actually know ki, okay, now this SOP has also been implemented. Now from tomorrow you have to do it like this, and so on and so forth. Because I think Shobhat will also agree, in our individual operations, we had a lot of luxury, right? We had relatively small spheres of influence that we had to manage. I had 55 people who reported to me. Shogoto had, maybe a couple of hundred, including his contractors, and these were people who were essentially permanent or at least semi-permanent, right? Like you'd have them for at least a year for the duration of the project, maybe in Shogoto's case, even if they were, say, seasonally employed people. So it was much easier for us to build SOPs, to implement them. We could spend a lot of time focusing on small problems until they got solved. How do you guys, how are you approaching this whole SOP aspect and people training and capability aspect? This is my last question on your Zepto stream.
Okay. I think answering to the first part of the question, where we find uh, individual, let's say, the delivery hubs that you have, or specific FC related policies that you can have, and how do you kind of build it out to a large scale SOP point of view. I think the most important factor is how do you kind of replay out those situations and how effective those solutions are in terms of building as a widespread SOP. I think not just it should not be a case specific to a geography or to a location specific. It should be in terms of overall point of view where you can kind of replicate it through and through. And I think the most important part of having or building an SOP is understanding whether it can be replicated. So I think for replication point of view, the crucial factor that we used to determine is what is going to be the impact in terms of, let's say, it can be cost saving, it can be in terms of productivity enhancement, it can be quality improvement in terms of that. So we used to have pilots, or basically a test case or sample analysis of such actions, and then we used to kind of quantify what is the goodness that we can gain out of it. If we were able to kind of gain at least a nominable in terms of goodness and everything of that sort, we will be able to kind of replicate and kind of scale it out across the network and kind of build that entire structure altogether. So that would be, I think, the major way we kind of handled SOPs and kind of built SOPs across organization. And I think coming to the second question, looking at the at e-commerce and quick commerce in general, you would be having a rotational availability of headcount and manpower on a daily basis point of view. There would be people joining and leaving based on their flexibility and all. I think two most important factors would be how can you control the attrition point of view, where you have kind of attrition control mechanisms, or where you kind of building the entire culture so that people do not leave the organization. So I think while I was working at Amazon, probably I can proudly say that the FC that I was working had the best working culture with associates, with leaders, with peers, and everybody. And people rarely used to leave. There were cases where people used to join and leave in the next 15, 20 odd days because they did not give that much time to kind of get assimilated into that ecosystem. If you would have given the time to kind of give yourself the time to get assimilated into that ecosystem, you would have felt that there is this huge difference in terms of how we kind of operate there and how other FCs operate. So it depends from FC to FC. It depends on leaders. It depends on how leaders interact and how they can be kind of conversationalists with the associates that are around there. I think the same methodology is what we are trying to apply here at Zepto as well, in terms of building that community, building that culture, building that team around. I think considering the urban workforce, since all our delivery hubs are located in urban locations, we get people from a lot of different parts of the city. I think interacting with them and kind of getting to know them, getting to know from where they belong, what they do or what they have done, and kind of getting that personal connect is extremely important in terms of understanding and in terms of building that team rapport. And it kind of plays out in the future where you do not have to work or do not have to worry about in terms of succeeding in the future.
It's super interesting. I did not expect that. I was not expecting an answer on SOPs to revolve around the fact that, hey, you manage training by ensuring people have to be only trained once, and then you do that by ensuring that people don't leave, so you don't need to train new people. But it actually makes a lot of sense that the best way to like keep standards and maintain them is to have, you know, a relatively steady organization with low churn, and that attrition plays a pretty big role in how difficult maintaining standards can become if you have to teach people on a regular basis. So that's actually very, very interesting. I always thought of attrition in terms of, oh, if people leave, operations becomes difficult, right? Supply chain becomes disrupted. I didn't really think of it so much in terms of how it impacts training and capability and standards. But that's super interesting. Shogato, you know, over to you for the
Yeah.
last part of the conversation, which is, you know, sort of how do you look at, you know, succeeding in this job, right, of operations as a career, which, you know, clearly, Aman, you've decided to make for yourself, at least for now and the foreseeable future. And what advice you might, you know, have for other people, your peers, and especially like the younger members of Ops Matters who have more recently started their careers and are trying to figure out, you know, stuff that is need not be, say, fulfillment center operations or working in production like I did or construction like Shogoto did, but still roles that are incredibly operationally linked, rely on people, have like dependencies of speed, of urgency, all of these different considerations.
Yeah. So I think we have gone through a lot of stellar opportunities, a lot of things you have learned, a lot of challenges you have dealt with through all of this. So as you mentioned, that some things that you did at Amazon really helped you succeed at your current role that you're doing at Zepto, right? Like for example, the SOPs that were there, the entire commerce part of it, whether it be e-commerce or quick commerce, there was some learnings that you could bring forward, the entire managing people, that entire aspect of things. So just taking a step back from e-commerce and commerce in general, like I would just want to ask you that what do you think are some specific skills that you really need in this day and age to succeed at operations in whatever role, any kind of generic operations role should have these particular skills? What do you think those are?
I think there are few different skill sets that you need. I would not say they are skill sets, but it's kind of attributes that you need to have to succeed in operations. I think the number one would be the hard work and resilience, specifically in operations point of view. Uh, ops is not an easy job. Running operations in any field, it can be manufacturing, it can be working in an air controlled FC, it can be working in a delivery hub. It is going to be a tough job altogether, where you'd be working across shifts, where you'd be working in day, where you'd be working in night, and everything of that sort. I think I have worked so many night shifts. I do not remember ki, matlab, I think I would have mentioned somewhere that I can relate to Batman because I have worked as many night shift as he has. So I think that is something that kind of helps you unlock a different side of your character altogether. In college, you would not have understood the meaning or would not have understood the importance of it. But I think when you work in ops, you understand the true meaning of hard work and resilience, how you can kind of prepare for the future, how you kind of ensure that you're prepared with plans in terms of any kind of exigency that might arise, and how can you initiate those action mechanisms quickly. Okay, and I think the other factor would be how interested you become in terms of running those things. In terms of uh, we had a term called deep dive, where we kind of uh, uh, took a problem and then kind of divided into sub problems, then divided those sub problems into multiple other things, and kind of tried to find out the actual crux of the problem. So how keen are you to find the actual crux of the problem and uh, kind of devise a solution based around it? And this solution will incorporate people management skills to a very large extent. It cannot be a solution that you have devised and you kind of want to kind of implement right away, because it would involve a lot of other stakeholders. It would involve either internal or external. It would involve such stakeholders who might give a go ahead or who might not give a go ahead. So you would have to kind of think those things into account and kind of devise solutions so that it kind of benefits the organization. So I think these 3-4 things would be kind of crucial and important.
Well, that's awesome. I think rather than thinking of it from a skills point of view, I think what you want to say is that you really need to be passionate about the problem and really need to identify with it and show up every day to try and solve the problem as it is. So that's, I think,
And
a
have
very
a very high EQ to kind of understand the problems that multiple people face. I think in ops, you would require someone with very high emotional quotient to kind of go through what either the associates are facing or your peers are facing, and why there is a disconnect between the teams running smoothly. I think if you are able to kind of understand, interact, and kind of reduce that friction, you have a team that runs as smoothly as a bullet train there.
That's quite good. I think on the point of EQ, right? Since like most of the people here, we have all been relatively young managers, right? We have picked up roles where we have had a lot of elder people report to us, and our job was to get things done from them. Now there are specific challenges that might come up in this, like how do you get them to listen to you? How do you have difficult conversations with them? Right, how do you also have to role model for them to follow through on the things that uh ask them to do, and in general how do you get your entire team to support you and propagate the mission that you're working on and really be a force multiplier for your mission, right? How do you handle this entire piece of managing people most of the times when they're older too?
Okay, I think basically the crux of the question would be how do you get accepted into a team and then kind of lead the team point of view. I think in most of my teams, I was the outsider joining in the team point and kind of understanding the people, meeting the people, and kind of getting to know them and then start leading them. I think that would be the first step that you should have. uh, I have heard this from multiple people that you should be the most knowledgeable one in the room. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's more of the sense that you have to be knowledgeable, but you also have to have that emotional connect with the people to kind of understand and kind of lead. In operations, that is extremely crucial that you understand the person, you understand his or her behaviors, you understand their personality, and then you understand their skill sets in terms of their strengths and weaknesses, so that when you are leading them, you kind of assign tasks that are kind of in line with their strengths. So once they are working on tasks that are in line with their strengths, they are bound to succeed. And once they succeed, they will kind of start gaining that confidence on not only on you, on themselves as well, and on the overall team point of view where they are kind of working. So I think understanding the person is extremely important in terms of leading people here. And once you join a team, it is extremely crucial that how you interact and gel up with those people. I think even in my previous stints, I would have led I think there were peers and managers who were somewhere around 35, 40 year old, and they kind of uh, had different views and kind of nuances to problems. But I think sitting with them, kind of understanding their viewpoint first, and then kind of coming up with your approach, making them understand what is the impact and what advantages are we going to get in case one versus case two, and how do you kind of ensure that with minimal effort we can drive the case two problems and kind of lead to success. I think that would be most crucial in terms of leading those teams where you are kind of working with managers who are kind of senior to you in terms of age.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think another aspect that a lot of folks here wanted to know about, since a lot of people here are very aspirational, a lot of the people in this community are just starting up, right? They're starting their entire journey into operations. They're very new into their career at this point. So they wanted to know specific aspects of how do you network with people, right? How do you make an entire network of operations professionals around you so that moving forward you either have an easier time, you know, getting better opportunities, an easier time reaching out to people and just asking, hey, how do I solve this problem, getting advice and anything else. So people just want to know, how is it that you go about building your own professional network and improving on it every day?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because ops is not very often seen as a field which is necessarily networking heavy. But I think given that there's been just so much proliferation of people across different organizations, different roles, right? People have come from investing into startups and into operations, have gone the other way, various different like examples, right? From large company to startups, from startups to corporate. So it I think at least there's enormous value of potentially building a strong professional network for people in operations or operationally centric roles. So any you know tips or any advice that you have there, and did building a network sort of help? Were you able to rely on people from different organizations, different perspectives? Is there any advice that you could offer there?
I think I do not have a very particularly framed answer for this. But I think the number one step would be joining Ops Matters, I would say, or related groups such as these, which kind of help you network with professionals. I think I have been part of this group, and I have seen the tremendous work that has been put into in terms of networking, in terms of building the dashboards and everything of that sort that this team does. So I think the most specific ones would be finding like-minded people across your organization, or the most common source would be LinkedIn in terms of that, and kind of connecting with them to understand how they flow by their day in terms of regular procedures point of view. I think for me, I have a network specifically based out of 2 or 3 more major companies. That is because of the interactions that I've had in previously in terms of my experience point of view. But I think most of the people can network out of their experience and out of their comfort zones and kind of look out into that aspect.
Got it. Makes sense. And I think like we have got a lot of pieces of advice from you, a lot of insights on how you should really be approaching an ops role and how you should be thinking about it from a very growth mindset, right? Challenging yourself every day, moving forward. So going forward on that track, is there any particular piece of advice you would want to give any folks in our community who are just going into their role in operations, and like any kind of a heads up, any kind of a thing that you think you did very well and that you want other people to really follow on that, or maybe you did not do something and you later on realize that and you want to give that piece of advice to other people, anything of that sort?
Okay, I think this is a piece of advice that I got from my first manager in one of the meetings that I was having. It's like always lead with a smile. Okay, and why this is most important in an ops role is because you're interacting with a lot of people on a daily basis. Okay, the time that I got this advice, I was not in a very comfortable situation professionally, I would say, where I was a very kind of high performing individual who was not able to kind of deliver on a few things because of internal and external issues. And whenever there were externalities, I used to feel that these things are out of my control and I cannot control it. And since I cannot control it, I do not have an action plan around it, and I am not able to kind of fix it, or I am not able to kind of provide a solution to the team. So his statement or his viewpoint was that always lead with a smile and always ensure that people perceive that you have the answers that they want. And when you have such charisma or what do you call it, interaction with the associates and with the peers, you get to know them personally and you get to kind of deliver on those specific tasks very easily, just because whatever plan that you are kind of forming, it might be a very half-baked plan point of view, you will have that support from the ground team in terms of delivering that. And this has played out on multiple occasions where we had very tough CPTs, where we had very high deliverables, and we had a lot of internal and external challenges, and we still kind of delivered just because the people believed that whatever plans that I had were kind of 100% achievable, even though I knew that it was somewhere around 75 to 80% achievable only. But that extra 20-25% push comes from that people itself, where they kind of rely on you based on the personal interactions that you have. Okay, so I think I would take that opportunity to say that across the FC, probably I would be one of the managers that would be solving the associates' problems on a daily basis, whether it can be personal, it can be professional, everything of that sort. There would be people who would be kind of coming up on breaks and asking a lot of different things, both personally and professionally. And I think those kind of interactions kind of help you out in uncertain situations and kind of lead you to a success point of view. And I think solving those problems one smile at a time kind of helped me in that sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aman, for spending the time with us, to have this brilliant session. This is something that we wanted to. It was probably, in fact, if we had it our way, this would have been the first session that we did at Ops Matters. But of course, you were transitioning and figuring out stuff at Zepto, and you just went through like multiple festive seasons. So we completely understand, why we had to wait several months to be able to get you on this call. But thank you so much for being as candid as you were, for sharing some of these aspects of operations. When people look at companies like Zepto, they look at companies like Amazon, you see these giant machines, which are just spitting out products and delivering stuff and just almost always being on time with quality. But there's just a very, very strong human element that is there at the back end of doing all of this, which I think for me was the biggest takeaway from this conversation. And given my own limited, comparatively experience, but it's something that resonates from the limited time that I spent in the factory, worked with people. I think this is also one of my biggest takeaways from having spent my early career in ops. And thank you for taking the time to have this discussion.